Hey people, how are you today? It's Makeda Valletta, and I am live on my page, Makeda Valletta Travels. My Instagram page, I'll repost it to my YouTube. In case you're unfamiliar with me, I am a native New Yorker who resides in Chicago, and I travel often in the country and out of the country. The last couple of years I've been more focused on traveling in the country because America is such a big country and very diverse and there's lots to see. But right now I want to talk about New Orleans and New York City, okay? New York City and New Orleans are two of my favorite cities in the world, okay? In the world. I'm not even going to say that New Orleans is one of the best cities in the country. It is, but it goes beyond that. It's one of the best cities in the world to me. And definitely New York City as well. And one thing I always notice about the two cities is they're the only two cities that I know of, unless I'm missing it, the only two major cities in America that begin with new. So you have New Orleans and New York. And then you have the Big Easy and the Big Apple, okay? So both of them are unique in those ways. And New York is a city that is full of culture, okay? It is the endangered language capital of the world. I would say it's the endangered dance capital of the world, and the dance capital of the world, and the fashion capital of the world, and the financial capital, right? It's the center of the world. So when you're in New York City, you have access to the world. I love growing up in New York because I had access to any and everything in New York City. To me, living in New York City was the next best thing to being able to travel around the world because everyone comes to New York. When I was a kid and Mandela got out, he came to Harlem. I went to see him. Castro came to Harlem. Everybody comes to New York, right? New Orleans, okay, is a city, and also as a dancer, when I first went to New Orleans, the very first time I went there was 2007. So I never went to New Orleans pre-Katrina. I went to New Orleans in 2007 for an Afro-Caribbean dance conference, okay? There was a Haitian dance teacher, an Afro-Cuban dance teacher, and a Congolese, So we did Haitian, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian, Congolese for all day for 2 weeks. The Haitian teacher, my teacher, Peniel Guerriere, he's in New York City. He was the very first Haitian folkloric dance teacher that I ever started studying with back in 2006. I'm actually going to his class this evening in Brooklyn. He was teaching an Afro-Cuban teacher, La Mora, I started studying with her in 2006. She also still teaches a couple of classes a week in New York City. She was there. And then it was Congolese and Afro-Brazilian. And then they brought a woman from Samana, Dominican Republic, who did a whole presentation about Afro-Dominican dances in the history of Bambula, which is a dance that's done in Samana, Dominican Republic, but it came from Louisiana. And there was this whole history behind it. And then they introduced us to New Orleans traditions, okay? They made us spend a weekend before we started studying, learning about New Orleans traditions. That's the Second Lines. That is the Skull and Bones crew. That is the Mardi Gras Indians, okay? New Orleans has a culture that is completely different than the rest of the United States, okay? Not only do we know they eat different food, but all over America, you find different types of food, okay? American food is one of my favorite cuisines, but American food is a lot of different things. Like, even in the South, people eat different things. The people eat in Mississippi is not what they're eating in the Chesapeake, okay? It's not what the Gullah Geechee people are eating. It's not what the people in New Orleans are eating. The people, so even in the South, you have different regions with different foods. And then you have the people in Maine are eating, in Seattle, in Colorado, in New Mexico, right? So America is a huge country, and American food varies a lot. So yes, New Orleans has their own cuisine, but also their laws are completely different than the rest of the country. Like if you go to law school in Louisiana, there becomes a point where you have to decide, are you going to practice like U.S. law or Napoleon law? And so they have something called Napoleonic law or something in Louisiana that's completely different than the rest of the country. New Orleans was the only place in the world where you could literally go get a drive-through daiquiri, and they sell alcohol at the liquor store, and you could get a drink to go. And it was very wild. And the very first time I went there, I fell in love with the city. It brought tears to my eyes, okay? I thought it was so beautiful. I love the people, okay? Love the people. I love listening to them speak, okay? The men and the women, I absolutely love listening to them speak. Which, by the way, I have to make a little comment about British accents, and no offense to the British people who might be down with Black Americans, but I really don't like British accents like that. To me, they sound like they have a stick up their ass, and it's interesting because I keep seeing these videos of Black Americans in the UK asking them about Black Americans, and they keep saying that Black Americans are, we don't know where we come from, and we're lost, and we're this, and we have no culture. And I heard that a lot growing up in New York City, okay? So that's one of the things I don't like about New York City. I currently live in Chicago. I'm in New York right now. I'm always back and forth. But one thing I appreciate about Chicago is that American culture is stronger. In New York, everything is about Caribbeans and Africans and foreign people, and growing up in New York City, whenever I would tell somebody I was American, another Black person or whatever, they would always act like they didn't understand that. Like, what do you mean? You look exotic. I thought you were Caribbean. Or, oh, you mean you're just regular Black? Or, I've heard plenty of people, that same Afro-Cuban dance teacher said to some people that Black Americans don't have any culture. And I've heard that so many times, and it pisses me off. And I think about New York City, and I think about Miami, is that you have large Caribbean populations who live in a Caribbean bubble. They don't travel around America, because notice I said that I travel out of the country, but I also travel in the country. America is a big, diverse country, and just going from state to state and city to city, it is vastly different, okay? As soon as you cross a state line in this country, you could think these two states are right next to each other. It's similar. It's not. New York State is not like New Jersey, okay? New York State is not like Connecticut. New York State is not like Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. It's not. Every single state, when you cross the state line, it's different, okay? And so there's a lot to see in this country, and it is very diverse, right? So with New Orleans, they have a beautiful, first of all, they acknowledge the African and American Indian mix, okay? Because all the Black Americans that I know, I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they come from Michigan, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, Virginia, Maryland. It doesn't matter. They all know the American Indian bloodlines and tribes they have in their family. They all know. Okay? And nobody knows what African tribes they have, if they even have any. Some people do, some people don't. But we all know the American Indian tribes we have in our family. We all were born and raised on this land, okay? We have, if you go travel to Africa, you will see how different we are. There's a lot of differences culturally with a lot of things. How we wear our hair, a lot of things, okay? And so the whole world imitates Black American culture. All day long, I hear everybody, including Africans, using the N-word. And I don't use that word. I don't like hearing it all the time. But I don't want to hear anybody say it, but I definitely don't want to hear you say it if you're not a Black American. I don't care if you're African. You didn't have the experience that we had in this country. So that's not your word to use and be so entitled to. No matter what I'm looking at, I see Africans, Caribbeans, white people, it don't matter, who have never even been to America, imitating Black American swag, imitating our slang, imitating our sayings. I constantly see that. So how can you imitate us so much? You know all of our stars. You know Beyonce's choreography. You guys love Michael Jackson. You love a lot of our stars, and you imitate them, but then you're going to say we don't have any culture. That's one thing that I appreciate about Beyonce's work. I'm going to do a video about that on my other page, Renaissance Amazon, just about her work of bringing Black American culture to the forefront, and it's many things. And if you're a Black American who's from the middle of the country, maybe if you're from the West Coast, but definitely if you're from the middle of the country, and a lot of times maybe even the South, you don't realize, how many foreign people think and say that we don't have any culture. And I constantly hear these corny people in the UK saying that about us. And it's like, dude, nobody's thinking about you, okay? Nobody's thinking about you. Black Americans, we have our own vernacular. When you see a lot of Africans and Caribbeans who move to the UK, they speak just like the British people And it's not swaggy, I'm sorry. They're trying to rap now and do drill. Most of us don't want to hear that, okay? I'd rather hear somebody from New York. Somebody from London, you can't rap like Nas. You can't rap like Rakim. You can't evoke those feelings. You also can't sound like Black Thought. You can't sound like Lil Wayne. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't sound like Andre 3000. I'm just saying, right? We're not imitating your music, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's Black British, white British. It doesn't matter who it is. Everybody imitates that. So I'm sick and tired of this we don't have any culture shit, okay? I'm just going to say that. Now, going back to the conversation with the Big Easy, New Orleans, okay? It is a city where the women are wild, the women are dominant, the men don't trip on it. They do a dance called bounce, which is like twerking, but it's not. The ass is going in a circle. It's very much a part of their culture. Women will jump out the street and do it anywhere. And the men or the women aren't like, oh, she's acting like a hoe, and da-da-da. They're not judging. The men are not violating, okay? I've never had a problem with the men in New Orleans, even though this is a dangerous city, okay? It's a dangerous city and there's a lot of killers, but they're very respectful to women. So, with that being said, I have spent a lot of time in New Orleans from 2007 until just the past couple years. I've slowed down with going there, but I used to spend weeks at a time in New Orleans. And I'm just going to say a few observations, okay? When I first went, my very first time in 2007, it was 2 years after Katrina, and I thought the city is so beautiful, it's so amazing. It brought tears to my eyes. I was like, I have to have clients down here so I can keep coming back. And people would warn me. People from New Orleans would warn me and say, like, I'd be getting ready to walk somewhere, and they'd be like, don't do that. It's dangerous. Like, it's more dangerous than you think. And I'll always be getting these warnings. Same thing happens in Chicago, because Chicago is a beautiful city. Okay, when you come, if you've never been to Chicago, if you come, you'll be like, this is the city that I'm hearing about. It doesn't look like it's so dangerous and bad, and it's beautiful and it's peaceful. But people who know the city know, okay, well, it looks beautiful and peaceful over here, but shit pops off. Okay, New Orleans is like that too, and actually, New Orleans is a lot worse. Okay. People always talk about Chicago and they think Chicago's the murder capital. No, Chicago, if you look at the list of the most violent cities in America with the highest homicides and crime, Chicago's never in the top 20. But New Orleans be like in the top 3, okay? So I remember observing the fact that, again, it's totally different than the rest of the United States. The culture there, okay? What flies. So I remember how seeing people who were so drunk in the French quarters, and they would be like, they're so drunk they couldn't even stand up straight. They're leaning against the wall, drunk as shit, having a whole conversation with the cops. And I would always think, in any other city, if somebody was that drunk, the last thing they would be trying to do is stand there and have a conversation with the cops. But in New Orleans, the cops would be standing there chit-chatting with drunk people. They're partying with people. I mean, you could see videos online of cops. It could be Mardi Gras, they're dancing. In New York, they don't play that, okay? In New York, they don't play that. If you think about 9/11, how horrific that was. Number one, New York handled that situation like a boss, okay? So when I talk about boss cities being efficient, because I'm sorry, southern cities are not efficient, not Houston, not Atlanta, not New Orleans, not Miami. Southern cities are not efficient, I'm sorry. Now, I remember Atlanta had 1 inch of snow and people had to leave their cars on the highway for 24 hours and kids were stuck at school. Houston, you had people dying because a couple of years ago because they lost power and it was cold and they wanted to be on their own grid in Texas, okay? Just dumb shit, okay? So you can't say, oh, Atlanta's never dealt with snow before, or they never dealt with this before. New York never dealt with the Twin Towers, you know, having something flying into it and exploding, where in New York, there's so many highways. That was a sunny, clear, beautiful day when 9/11 happened. There's so many highways. You could be coming across the bridge from Brooklyn, across the Brooklyn Bridge, across the Manhattan Bridge, across the Williamsburg Bridge. You could be coming across the bridges coming from Staten Island. You could come across the people that are coming into Manhattan from New Jersey, okay? The George Washington Bridge. You got the tunnels. You got the people coming from Queens, the Queens Bridge and the Triborough Bridge. I mean, there's so many highways going towards Manhattan where people could see this happen while they're driving, okay? We didn't have mass accidents. People didn't need to leave their cars on the highway. That day they said that people couldn't come on off the island. Nobody got stuck at school. They handled it like a boss, okay? And it's the efficiency of New York, okay? So when it comes to, when I would be on Bourbon Street, I remember looking, hold on a second, hold on. Sorry, my mom just called me, okay. So I remember being on Bourbon Street and seeing people, you know, like the cops are just playing around, whatever. And there was 2 summers in a row. This might be like 10 years ago. There were 2 summers in a row that I was in New Orleans and like 20 people got shot in Bourbon Street, okay, in like 2 minutes. A bunch of people died. And I remember, and Bourbon Street is like their Times Square, okay? Meaning it's the touristy part, the most touristy part of the city. And New York City has several touristy areas, but Times Square is like one of the most iconic touristy areas. When you go to Times Square, you're not around a lot of native New Yorkers. Native New Yorkers don't usually go to Times Square, okay? Native New Yorkers are not going to Times Square on New Year's Eve, I can tell you that for sure. There's not a single native New Yorker, or even a New Yorker who's lived here for a long time, who is going to freaking Times Square. That's not happening, right? So, same thing with Bourbon Street. New Orleans people don't hang out on Bourbon Street. That's where tourists go. Whenever I was in New Orleans, I would hang out on Frenchmen Street. It's another part of the quarters, which to me is way cooler. Bourbon Street is corny, just like Times Square is corny. It's just corny. It's not the best part, you know. But in New York, you would never have. Hold on. I'm sorry. My mom is texting me and telling me that. Okay. What was I saying? In New York, they would never allow 10 people to get shot in Times Square. Okay. The NYPD will shoot you first. Like 9/11, I thought that day was going to be a lot worse. I thought it was going to be like, you know what happened in Paris? I don't know if it was like 10 years ago in Paris. They had multiple things going on at once. They had some people shooting up a restaurant, somebody setting up a bomb in front of a stadium. They had all these different things going on at multiple times, which freaks me out because Paris reminds me of New York so much. But I thought 9/11 was going to be like that, like multiple things. And New York City is a city where you have millions of people, not just millions of people that live here, like 9 million, 8.5 million people that live here. You have millions of people coming in and out this city every single day. Every single day, you have millions of people, literally millions, by train, bus, car, plane coming into the city. So it is always amazing to me. It is amazing to me that nobody has blown up New York or Times Square yet. Okay. Now, I personally don't like Times Square at all, and I wouldn't something happen, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like it's a target, but the powers that be that watch over New York are paying attention for real. Okay. So if you go to a parade in New York, you go to the West Indian Day parade, you're not going to see the cops dancing with people. They're not dancing with you. They're not standing around like completely in your face having a conversation with drunk people. They're paying attention. So it's not to say that stuff doesn't happen here, but like I said, in New Orleans, a lot of people have been killed on Bourbon Street, okay, on the regular, a lot, all right? So I've always said the New Orleans police do not pay attention, okay? Like, you've never seen a police brutality march in New Orleans. You've never seen that. You've never seen black people in New Orleans complaining about the cops, because in New Orleans, they have a different type of corruption in New Orleans, okay? New Orleans, most of the cops are black, first of all, okay? So it's not a situation even of, oh, most of the cops are white. No, most of the cops are black. And because New Orleans is a small city, a lot of times the criminals grew up with the cops. So I feel like it's a city where criminals have always kind of like gotten away. The murder rate has always been high. It's always been very corrupt, like Chicago. But in New Orleans, it's like murder is like nothing, okay? People get killed all the time down there. So the police, I feel like a lot of times they're not, the kind of corruption is different because it's like, you know, these people, you know, their family. You may not want to come after them because you don't want them to retaliate. In New Orleans, there's something called a second line, okay? It is one of my favorite things. Again, talking about Black American culture. To anybody who thinks, okay, anybody who is listening to this, okay, any African, any Caribbean, anybody from anywhere who thinks that Black Americans don't have any culture, you're going to dead that right now. Now, New Orleans has something called a second line, which is off the chain. I don't feel like anybody's bands are as good as Black American bands. If you go to the HBCUs, like how Beyonce just did the Super Bowl, she had Texas Southern's band, okay? Nobody does that like we do, okay? That's a part of Black American culture, okay? And that right there is a huge part. Now, and I think I think that band culture might have come out of New Orleans or Louisiana. But in New Orleans, you have something called the second line. And the second line makes me want to jump out of my skin. I freaking love it, okay? It's way better than soca music. No, the second line, they have horns and drums. It is amazing. And it's something, people are drinking. Drinking is a huge part of the culture in that city. It's a city full of functional alcoholics, okay? So people are drinking, they're dancing, it's moving around. And it was traditionally done for the dead, okay? It was traditionally done at funerals, or to raise money for funerals and at funerals. And so the first line was the band, the second line was the dancers. The dancers were so amazing that they put them in front of the band, okay? Hence why they called it the second line. But the second line with the dancers, they put the dancers in front of the band because they were so amazing, and it's called a second line. It's a tradition from New Orleans that is amazing. They don't, like, even though it came out of like death and funeral traditions, now they don't just do it for that reason. But if somebody dies, okay, if it's somebody that's in the community, they're going to have a second line. If it's a famous person, like when Michael Jackson died, you can go on YouTube and put Michael Jackson second lines in New Orleans. You will see people dancing on the ceilings, on the roof of buildings. Everybody's outside dancing, right? And so and that's a tradition that is huge in New Orleans, dancing at death. And the whole thought of that is to be able to dance off your trauma, so you're not holding on, because when death happens, people mourn. They can't let go of this spirit. So part of it is to let go of that, and also to help shake it off, regenerate your energy. Because if you just sit in that mourning, the belief is that not only do you suffer, but that spirit can't go on to where it's supposed to go to, and all of that. So the dancing at death is a way to move that energy, move the energy of the recently passed, and uplift it, and move your energy so you don't have trauma sitting on you and sadness, right? Can't be sad when you're dancing, okay? That's one reason why I dance so much. Like I said, I'm on my way to a dance class this evening, and this is also connected to New York. For the past, what is today? Today is January 2nd, Thursday? Okay. So last Friday, I went to a Haitian folkloric dance class in Lower Manhattan. Saturday, I went to a Haitian dance class in Brooklyn, Saturday morning. Sunday, and Haitian folkloric dance is really exhausting, okay? It really works your body. I mean, you're kicking legs, your hips are undulating, your shoulders, you got your head involved, okay? It's a lot, okay? Going this direction, that, you have agility, it's like everything, okay? So Saturday morning. Then Sunday, I went to an Afro-Brazilian dance class and then a Congolese dance class, okay? So that was 3 hours. In Afro-Brazilian, samba and other Afro-Brazilian dances, there's a lot of hips, okay? A lot of hips and shoulders, and so was the Congo, okay? And then on Monday, I went to another Haitian dance class with a different teacher at Avenelli on Monday evening. So New York City, and literally there's a list of classes like every single day of the week that I could go to that overlap each other. Every day of the week I could either take Afro-Brazilian, Haitian, Afro-Cuban, Congolese. Those are the things that I'm really into, but there's tons of other dance classes, okay? There's West African, there's Senegalese, Sabar, there's Ghanaian dance, then there's all the different kinds of jazz dance you have here, and ballet, and tap, and modern, and belly. I mean, New York City has every kind of dance, but I'm just saying for the Afro-Caribbean stuff that I'm into, the Haitian folklore, the Afro-Cuban, and there's a variety of Afro-Cuban dances, the Afro-Brazilian, Congolese. I'm also into Afro-Puerto Rican stuff, but you can find that 7 days a week, multiple classes. It's not just one dance school. It's not just one class. It's multiple. Okay, so that's one of the things that makes New York unmatched. The only other city that has that is the Bay Area. The difference between the Bay Area and New York is that New York has better musicians, okay? So if you go to one of the Haitian dance class in the Bay Area, and much love to my Bay Area people, no offense, but I'm just saying, I'm a New Yorker, I keep it real, if you go to a Haitian dance class in the Bay Area, they'll have like one really good Haitian drummer, and then they'll have three mediocre drummers, because, you know, California is really hippy-dippy. So California is like, everybody's good, and let's come, let's do what we feel. New York is a critic, okay? New York says, if you're not good, then get up out of here and move, okay? It's about showing and proving in New York. It's not about clicks. Same thing with New Orleans, okay? New Orleans has a lot of talented people. A lot of talented people. It's ridiculous, okay? New Orleans is the only city that has inspired me outside of New York City, okay? New York City inspires me every single day of my life, okay? Every single day. So when people say, why do people live in New York? Why do they spend money live in New York? Because you have access to the world. You have access to all kinds of things that you don't have access to. If you're a cultural person, if you're an intellectual person, if you like to be mentally stimulated, if you like to walk and use your body, there's no better place on earth to be than New York City, okay? If you're a dancer, no better place on earth to be, okay? You love live music, all of that, okay? There's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of virtues to New York City. Both cities have really talented people. New York City has a lot of talented people that are coming from all around the world. New Orleans has a lot of talented people who are homebred, okay? And a lot of times they have to leave New Orleans to make money. Like a New Orleans person can come to New York, that's where the money's at. New Orleans doesn't have a lot of money. New York has a lot of money. New York, when it comes to the education system, way better, okay? New Orleans, they neglect that type of stuff, all right? So both cities are great. New Orleans is a little big city is what I call it, okay? And what happened, it doesn't surprise me because I've always said, it surprised me that somebody drove down the street in a pickup truck, but the fact that the city wasn't prepared does not surprise me. That city they don't handle things like a boss. And like I told you from the beginning, the NOPD, okay, the NOPD does not pay attention. They don't pay attention. And people get killed in the French Quarters all of the time. People get killed on Bourbon Street all the time. You don't see people getting killed in Times Square all the time. And New York is dealing with a way greater volume of people all the time. New Orleans is not busy all the time. I've spent a lot of times in New Orleans. Sometimes it's really busy, sometimes it's really dead and feels like a ghost town. New York City doesn't have a downtime. We don't have a down season. Even in the winter time, people are in this city, okay? The winters, Christmas and New Year's and all that just passed. It's the winter wonderland during that time. But New York knew. They were like, this wouldn't happen, okay? In New York, people driving down the street in that big pickup truck, because New York puts big snow trucks and dump trucks, and they block everything off. Then there's tons of police, and a lot of times, ever since 9/11, we have military people standing around, okay? If you go in Penn Station, if you go in, like, Port Authority, Penn Station is, like, our major train station where Amtrak and stuff. Ever since 9/11, that's 24 years ago now. You see people standing, you see 3 cops, 2 military, whole military gear and guns and all that. 2 more cops over there, 3 military, and they are watching. So if you even think you're about to pop off with that, it's not going to happen. You might get 1 person, you're not going to shoot 10 or 20, and you're definitely not going to come barreling down the street. And it's New Year's Eve, okay? Look at all the people that was in New York City on New Year's Eve every single year, okay? So, New Orleans makes all the money off of tourism. They cannot afford to lose tourists, okay? Because that city does not have a lot of money, and all the money they make is from tourism, okay? New York City has many sources of income. Tourism is a big source of our revenue, but it's also the financial capital, the fashion capital, the dance capital. It's the center of so many things. Like we got Broadway, the theater capital. So there's a lot of reasons why people come here. There's a lot of ways we make money. It's not And then we got millions of people. New York has more millionaires than any city in the world. New York has 144 billionaires. So there's a lot of money here. So if you have a business here, you can have it. Not only do you have millions of potential customers, there's a lot of people that have money. There's a lot of people that don't, but there's a lot of people that do. So the money making potential in New York is way greater than a city like New Orleans, because in New Orleans, if the people don't come, you're not making anything. In New York, you can make money even if people don't come here, because we already have like 9 million people and a lot of them have money. So it's not a poor city. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that New Orleans needs to really get it together. They got the Super Bowl coming. They got Mardi Gras. Like they got Jazz Fest is a big deal. Essence Fest, Halloween. Like they constantly have major stuff happening there, and festivals. It brings a lot of people to the city. But if you've never been to New Orleans, I definitely think it's a city that you must go to. However, like every city, it's been changing. No city is the same way it was 30 years ago, okay? I don't care if you're from Chicago, I don't care if you're from Miami, I don't care, where you're from. 30 years ago, you can say that there were differences in your city, especially 40, 50 years ago, okay? So every place is going to change. And since COVID, it seems like the French Quarters has gotten a lot more sketchy, okay? And I haven't been spending as much time over the past couple of years, but from 2007 to 2020, I was in New Orleans. Like I took 3-4 trips down there. I'd be there for 1, 2, 3 weeks at a time. Okay. So, it's a great city, an inspiring city with beautiful people. And I just posted something on my page because I told you about the second line. Now, to people who don't understand, like today, they're having a second line on Bourbon Street where those people died, okay? They're about to open up the businesses. And some people can say, how are they having a parade? How are they singing and dancing and playing music down the street when people just got ran over? Because that's a part of New Orleans culture. Again, there is definitely several different cultures in America, okay? I'm talking about subsets of American culture is what I mean. Okay, not foreign stuff, but just American culture is many different things. We share a common thread, but then there's differences. And New Orleans has their own culture that's different than the rest of the country. And Black Americans in New Orleans have their own culture. So again, for anybody who's going to say that we don't have any culture, shut that shit up. Okay, and then check yourself when you copy what we're saying, and you copy our slang, and you're copying our music and everything else that we do. Okay, so New Orleans, dancing at death is what they do to help move and uplift that energy, to move and uplift the sadness out of that place. But I will say, I think Bourbon Street has bad juju, okay? I just graduated from a graduate program at the University of Maryland in spring of 2024. One woman who graduated with me, who's one of my favorite classmates, okay, I adore her. This young girl, she might be like 24. She's Congolese and she's from California. And she went to New Orleans for college, and she stayed there. And I know that she works on Bourbon Street. I know a lot of people in New Orleans, but I knew that most of them were okay because I could just see their posts online, and also because most of the people I know from New Orleans are from there, so they wouldn't be on Bourbon Street. Like I said, New Orleans people don't hang out on Bourbon Street. Like New Yorkers don't hang out in Times Square, especially not on New Year's Eve, okay? So I kind of knew that. But then I thought about her because I remembered that she works there. She works in strip clubs and some bars or something on Bourbon Street. So I hit her up last night to see if she was okay. And she told me that truck went right past her job, that her coworkers were shaken up, whatever, and that she was not working that night because she just happened to be on vacation. But she said otherwise, if she hadn't decided to take vacation, she would have been there. And she said she's always around at that time. And a lot of times she's outside at that time. Because another thing about New Orleans is that people say New York is a city that never sleeps. New Orleans is a city that never sleeps. That's truly the city that never sleeps. Like both cities are probably like that, but New Orleans, they will be like partying in the street, on the sidewalk, music blasting, 5 a.m. It's still lit. I love that city. I love it, okay? It's one of my favorite places on earth. I love New Orleans, okay? But I can say the flaws in the city. New York City is not perfect. New York City has a problem with their garbage collection, okay? Not that the whole city is dirty, but New Orleans has a problem with the garbage collection. But you know what? New Orleans is dirty too. New Orleans can stink too. You go down there in the summertime and Canal Street, it stinks. But some of the dopest cities are dirty a little bit, okay? New Orleans and New York are two of the dopest cities in America, and they could be a little dirty and funky sometimes, okay? Not the whole city, because all New Orleans is not like that. All New York City is not like that. But it's especially like that in more commercial areas, and maybe some other areas, but it's not the whole city. But I'm just saying, like, some of the dopest cities, Chicago is like super clean, and Chicago's beautiful, but it's not as dope as New York and in New Orleans. It's just not. It's a beautiful city, but in terms of the culture there, it's not as dope as New York and New Orleans. Chicago's beautiful, but it doesn't inspire me, okay? In New Orleans, I get inspired just walking down the street. New York City, I get inspired just walking down the street. New York and New Orleans are the only two cities where you see legitimately super talented people performing in the street. When I see street performers in Chicago, in Florida, in California, they suck. When I saw them in Colombia or when I was in Europe, they sucked, okay? When you see street performers in New York City, you see some talented ass people. Same thing with New Orleans, okay? So both cities are like these artistic meccas. They have very unique culture. There's no place like New York and there's no place like New Orleans. There's literally no place like New York and there's no place like New Orleans. Like, what you're going to get in New Orleans, you're not going to get anywhere else in the world, not even close. What you're going to get in New York, you're not going to get anywhere else in the world, not even close. Okay? So, the Big Easy and the Big Apple, New York and New Orleans, two of the dopest cities in the world, dopest cities in America. And when you see them singing and dancing up and down Bourbon Street, and you're confused as to why they're having a parade and a party when people just died, that's why. I just explained to you what the second line is. If you want to know more about it, go on YouTube, put in New Orleans second line, and see what you can find, okay? I remember back in the day, I used to try to document stuff all the time when I was down there, and I lost a lot of those videos. I used to always, and it's hard because it's like, I love the music and I want to dance, but then I want to document it. I want to document it for those of you who can't be there, for those of you who never can come there. And documenting stuff on video is not the same as being there. But I just felt like I needed to document it. But you can't document and be present. So because I want to dance and I want to, but then I'm like, I can't do that if I'm holding the camera. So it's like that balance, right? But I love New Orleans. My heart goes out to that city, but really, I'm going to say it's the fault of the New Orleans police and the people the powers that watch over that city. Y'all need to do better. You need to get your shit together. New Orleans needs to get their shit together, because if tourists stop coming to your city, you're going to lose everything. The city's already poor. All your money comes from tourism. The Super Bowl is coming up, okay? Mardi Gras is coming up. Like, you know, why don't you guys talk to the people that run an NYPD and get a freaking lesson on how to run your city, how to protect your city, you know, from stuff like that. And like I said, this incident is only one incident in which people constantly get killed on Bourbon Street. Even my friend that I told you that, you know, wasn't at work that night, she told me she has seen so many shootings, robbing, or people getting robbed, shot at, and something else that she said that she's seen a lot, just working on Bourbon Street. And that she said everybody, like in her industry, they all know each other. And they all have this common, like, worry when they go to work of, like, we never know what's going to happen. And they do feel nervous, but yet they need to go to work and make money, and they don't get paid that much. That's the thing about New Orleans. As a visitor, it's a great city because stuff is very cheap. You can go in a lot of places that's free, there's no cover, things are it's cheap. But on the flip side, the workers don't get paid that well. The musicians don't get paid that well. Another difference between New York and New Orleans, and New York and Louisiana, is that New York is a very pro-union state. There's like certain, or city or whatever, and there's certain, like, just when it comes to workers, a certain standard. When you go to the South is very anti-union. New Orleans is very anti-Louisiana. I remember a few years ago, I was in New Orleans. I was about to go to a pole dancing class, and they were building a Hard Rock Cafe downtown. A Hard Rock Hotel. Hard Rock Hotel restaurant. It was a hotel. It was a whole building. They were in construction, and it collapsed. It collapsed while they were building it, and it killed the workers. That wouldn't happen in New York. I mean, it almost could have, dealing with Mayor Adams. with this building. That one of the reasons why he got in trouble was he was, I think it was a Turkish businessman who was trying to buy a building in New York and get it open, and he wasn't passing the fire codes or something like that, and that was one of the scandals. But because New York is such a pro-union city, there's like standards, and when you start having those non-union stuff and they get the workers and they're trying to undermine and undercut, that's when shit collapses when you're building it. Like, that's crazy. So there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of corruption everywhere. There's corruption in every state, every city, every country in the world. There's corruption. But New Orleans is particularly corrupt. And so is Chicago. Okay? New Orleans and Chicago, Illinois is the most corrupt political state. Okay? And Chicago's the most corrupt political city, like, in America. But New Orleans is not far behind. So yeah, I just wanted to say, if you do ever go to New Orleans, I would say don't hang out on Bourbon Street, okay? It's not the coolest part. It's the corny touristy area. I would say go to Frenchman. I'm going to tell you, people get killed on Bourbon Street all the time, okay? People get killed all the time, all right? New Orleans is also the South. They've always had a higher murder rate, and it's a shoot-'em-up city. People carry guns. New York is not really gun crazy. It doesn't mean people don't get shot here, but it's not a gun crazy city like a lot of America, and especially not like New Orleans. And New Orleans is not safe. It's a very fun city, but you need to be careful. And one of those ways, I would say, stay away from Bourbon Street. Like, if you want to have a quick walk down it because you want to, just like if you want to come to New York and go to Times Square is way overrated. People from New York City never even want to take their friends and family to Times Square, but tourists always want to go there. But I'm going to tell you right now, Times Square is not at all the coolest part of New York City. And it's not authentically New York either. So there's people who come to New York and they stay in a hotel in Times Square and they're just in that area. And then they're like, I don't really like New York. It's too busy. It's too this. It's too that. And it feeds into your stereotypes and what you think about New York. But where you were was not where New Yorkers be. And you were probably around a lot of tourists. And Times Square, that little touristy area, is a very small percentage of what New York City is, okay? And with New Orleans, Bourbon Street is a very small percentage of the coolness and the dopeness of New Orleans. So go watch, if you want to go there, go look at some blogs and let somebody tell you where to go. But I can tell you Frenchman Street is where you should hang out in the French Quarters, and not Bourbon Street. The police are not paying attention. They're not paying attention, so you have to pay attention, okay? And you have to have your head on swivel, be paying attention, okay? So I'm going to end that with this. One more thing about New York is that you've seen lately people getting like set on fire on the train and pushing the train tracks. People get pushing the train tracks more than you think, even though I have never known anybody in my life that ever got pushed in the train tracks, and I don't know anybody that knows anybody who ever got pushed in the train tracks. But I will say that a lot of times when I'm in New York, I notice people who stand on the edge of the platform waiting for the train. They're standing like literally in the edge of the platform, and they're on their phone or they're reading something. Whether you're on your phone or not, you shouldn't stand at the edge of the platform, but you definitely don't want to combine that with being on your phone and not paying attention. And so there was just recently somebody got pushed in the train tracks, and that man was standing on the edge on his phone. Now, when I take the train, okay, I've never stand by the edge. And I don't care if I'm on the train, I don't care where I'm at in the world. I have traveled many places, okay? New York City is not that dangerous. New York City is one of the safest cities in the world. Like, if you look at, like, some of the most dangerous cities are in South Africa, Mexico, like, even in America, you got, St. Louis and New Orleans and Baltimore and Oakland, okay? DC, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Little Rock, Arkansas, Houston, all those cities are way more dangerous than New York City, okay? And so I've traveled to a lot of places by myself that's dangerous, in Colombia, in Mexico, in Oakland, California, the hood in Miami, like the hood in Philly. Like, there's so many places I've traveled to, and I'm not saying I'm invincible or anything like that, but I just know that no matter where I go, I'm always paying attention. I'm always paying attention to who's around me, who looks like they could be a threat. I'm always thinking about how I would move. I have my body a certain way, and I'd be having on sneakers. I'll be walking around in heels. Like, I could get up and go, kick you in the stomach, jump on top of some shit, whatever, right? So I feel like a lot of people aren't paying attention. And like I don't have a fear of being pushed in the train tracks because I pay attention. I don't position myself so that can happen, and I pay attention, and I'm not making it easy for them. But I think that, and somebody from New York can comment, I think most New Yorkers feel safe on the train. I mean, I do. I don't feel like, I feel unsafe in Chicago on the train at night. But even in the daytime, I've been scared by people. But New York, I've never felt that way. But I also really do pay attention to. So, I'm going to end that there. I just wanted to do my little talk about New York and New Orleans real quick. How New York, can handle things like a boss. New Orleans cannot. They don't. They need to get their shit together. They need to fucking pay attention. Right? Because that shit should never have happened. New York and New Orleans are both super unique cities. Really unique culture that you can't find anywhere else in the world. They're two of the dopest cities in the world. Okay? They're both super inspiring. Great music and dance and culture. Yeah. New Orleans has better food, but New York has more variety. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. If you've been to either city, you want to leave any comments, please do. I hope if you know people in New Orleans, they're good. In New Orleans, I hope you get it together because you're a beautiful city, and we don't want people to stop coming because you guys get people are getting killed all the time in your most touristy part of your city. Get your shit together. All right? Okay. Have a good day, guys. Talk to you later. Bye. I'm trying to close this out.